I was standing in the shadows of my own garage, grease under my fingernails and a $40,000 venue deposit in my bank statement, when I heard my future son-in-law laugh. It wasn't a joyful sound. It was the sharp, jagged cackle of a predator who thinks he's already won. On the ceremony, Justin sneered to his father, his voice cutting through the humid Tampa night like a blade. I'm going to humiliate this pathetic old fool in front of everyone. Picture his face when I tell the whole room he's just a lucky mechanic who doesn't belong in our world. They laughed together, a cold, entitled sound, convinced I was just a rich, blind idiot paying for the privilege of my own public execution. I looked at the 1967 Chevrolet Impala I was restoring, its engine open like a chest cavity, and I smiled quietly. They thought they were the architects of my downfall. They didn't realize I've spent 40 years learning exactly how to take a broken machine apart. My name is Thomas Merrick. I'm 64 years old, and in this city, the name Merrick stands for something. I built Merrick Premium Motors from a single-bay garage into 5 elite dealerships. I started with nothing but a wrench and a stubborn refusal to quit. Now, my signature is worth millions on a franchise agreement. But you see, that's the problem with building a mountain. Everyone wants to stand on the peak, but nobody wants to do the climbing. I always thought success meant providing for my family, giving them the life I never had. I didn't realize I was just handing my daughter a golden shovel to dig my grave. Have you ever felt the person you love most looking at you like you're nothing more than a transaction? My daughter, Allison, is 28. She's brilliant, beautiful, and she has her mother's piercing green eyes. I remember when she was 7, sitting on my workbench, asking me how a carburetor worked. She wanted to know the soul of things. But that girl died the day she met Justin Caldwell. 3 years ago, she brought him to Sunday dinner. He was a financial consultant in a suit that cost more than my first 3 cars combined. He had a handshake like a dead fish and a smile that stayed strictly on his lips, never once reaching his eyes. From that first night, he didn't look at my home. He appraised it. He didn't listen to my stories. He calculated my net worth. The change in Allison was like a slow-acting poison. First, the visits became shorter. Then, the phone calls became transactional. When she did come by, Justin was always there, steering the conversation toward diversifying assets and modernizing my portfolio. He never called me Mr. Merrick. He never asked. He just assumed he was the smartest person in the room because he knew words like cryptocurrency, and I knew the weight of a torque wrench. Then came the wedding announcement. Allison called me, her voice bright with a forced, brittle enthusiasm. "Dad, we've set a date, April 12th, the Renaissance Vinoy in St. Pete. It's going to be perfect." I told her I'd take care of it, whatever she needed. The silence on the phone was heavy. She expected a fight, but I gave her a blank check instead. The bills started hitting my desk like mortar shells. Catering, $28,000. The band, $8,500. Flowers, $12,300. Photography, $9,000. The total climbed to $85,000. I paid every single invoice without a word, watching my daughter turn into a stranger who only messaged me when a new bill was due. But back to that night in the garage, the night the music stopped. Justin didn't know the garage shared a thin wall with the living room. He didn't know I'd turned off the radio to focus on a tricky fuel line. "He's so desperate for her approval," Justin continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "It's actually pathetic. He'll do anything she asks. We're going to clean up on this wedding, Dad. We're going to bleed him dry and then toss him aside." His father, Richard, laughed. "These nouveau riche types need a lesson in humility, Justin. He thinks money makes him sophisticated. We'll show the world what he really is." My heart didn't race. It grew cold. It grew steady. When something is broken, a real mechanic doesn't scream at the engine. He diagnoses the failure. He identifies the faulty part, and then he removes it. I walked into the living room 5 minutes later. Justin was sprawled on my leather couch, shoes on the upholstery, sipping my 20-year-old scotch. He looked up and flashed that hollow practice smile. "Hey, Thomas. Just talking to my dad about the seating. How's the car?" "Fine," I said. My voice was a flat line. "I'm heading to bed." "Sure thing. Oh, hey, We're thinking of upgrading the champagne. Another 3,000. That okay? I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the greed, the arrogance, and the absolute certainty that I was too stupid to see through him. Send me the invoice, I said. His smile widened. He thought he'd won. He didn't realize he'd just signed the first warrant for his own destruction. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my study and thought about the girl who used to point at me from the graduation stage. Where did she go? When did my love become a commodity to be traded? The answer was sleeping in my guest room, under my roof, on my sheets. Before we go further, if you appreciate stories about men who stand their ground against the disrespect of those they've built everything for, subscribe to our new channel. We share the chronicles of those who reclaim their power. The next morning, I confronted Allison in the kitchen. She was scrolling through her phone, looking at $200 leggings she'd bought with my credit card. Tell me about Justin, I said. She stiffened immediately. What do you mean? We've been over this. Do you love him, or do you love what he promises you? Her face hardened into a mask of pure entitlement. You're just jealous, Dad. You're jealous that I have someone who actually understands modern success. Someone who doesn't think the peak of life is selling cars. Justin says you're stuck in the past. You're old-fashioned and judgmental, and I'm tired of apologizing for you. Each word was a punch. I let them land. I see, I said softly. I just wanted to hear it from you. The wedding is in a month, she snapped. Can we just get through this without the drama? No drama, I promised. I'll stay out of your way. I meant it, but not in the way she thought. That afternoon, I made 3 calls. The first was to a private investigator named Martin Stevens. The second was to my attorney, Roger Wilson. The third was to my banker. The hunt had begun. 3 days later, Martin met me in a dim coffee shop. He slid a folder across the table. Richard Caldwell is drowning, Thomas, he said. His firm is a shell. He's $340,000 in debt. His house in Clearwater is 3 months behind on payments. He's weeks away from losing everything. I felt a spark of grim satisfaction. And Justin? Even better. He's been fired from 3 firms in 7 years. Financial impropriety, unauthorized trading, pocketing commissions. He's a con artist, Thomas. He's working at a mid-tier firm now because they didn't do a deep background check. And there's this. Martin slid another paper forward. 3 weeks ago, Justin and Allison took out a $75,000 private loan. High interest. They used her credit because his is trash. They're already spending money they don't have, betting on the wedding gifts to bail them out. They weren't just disrespecting me. They were predatory. They were vultures circling a man they thought was already dead. I met with Roger next. I told him I wanted to move every asset I owned, the dealerships, the house, the accounts, into an irrevocable living trust. I want specific conditions, Roger. Inheritance is contingent on demonstrable respect and support during my lifetime. I want a clause that allows me to remove any beneficiary who fails those standards. And I want it all documented. You're building a legal fortress, Roger noted. No, I replied. I'm building a cage. While the paperwork was being drafted, I played the part of the doting silent father. Allison sent invoices, I paid them. Justin made suggestions about my investments. I nodded. The more I gave, the more their arrogance grew. They started treating my house like a hotel. Justin would help himself to my finest liquors and talk about the startup capital I'd be providing for their new firm after the honeymoon. 100,000, he suggested. For Allison's future, he'd say, leaning back in my chair. I watched them like a mechanic watching a failing transmission. I saw every tell, every lie, every moment of shared contempt they thought I was too old to notice. Does it ever feel like the people closest to you are just waiting for you to disappear so they can divide the spoils? The week before the wedding, my banker, Patricia, called. The debt purchase is ready, Thomas. All 4 of Richard Caldwell's creditors are willing to sell. For $290,000, you will be the sole owner of every penny he owes. His house, his business, his future, it will all belong to you. Do it, I said. On the day before the wedding, I called Allison and Justin to my office. They walked in looking annoyed, as if I were wasting their valuable time. I let them sit in front of my desk while the hustle of my successful business hummed outside the glass. "I have something to tell you about the wedding," I began. Allison sighed, checking her watch. "Dad, if this is about the flower costs—" "I won't be attending," I said. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a man. Allison's jaw dropped. "What? You're joking." "I have urgent business in Orlando. It can't be rescheduled." "This is my wedding," she screamed, standing up. "My only wedding. You're choosing a meeting over me?" "I've paid for everything, Allison. $85,000. The ceremony will be perfect. I just won't be there to witness it." Justin leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He smelled a trap, but he couldn't see the teeth. "Thomas, surely your staff can handle it. This looks terrible. What are people going to think?" "They'll think I'm a busy man," I said. "Which I am." They left in a storm of rage and tears. Allison called me a selfish old man. Justin told her I was just punishing her because I was jealous of their happiness. I watched them walk to their car, and I felt nothing. The daughter I loved was already gone. This woman was just another part that needed replacing. The wedding went on without me. I watched the video later. I saw the empty chair in the front row. I saw the awkward silence when the officiant asked who gave the bride away. And I saw Justin's toast. He stood up, champagne in hand, and laughed. "It's a shame Mr. Merrick couldn't be here. Apparently his checkbook is more reliable than his presence. But hey, at least we know where he stands, right?" The room laughed. A few people looked uncomfortable. Justin looked triumphant. He thought he'd had the last word. He was wrong. The last word was currently being delivered via certified mail. The next morning, while they were nursing hangovers in their luxury suite, a courier delivered 2 envelopes, one for the newlyweds, one for the father of the groom. When Allison called, her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was terrified. "Dad, what is this? Why did a lawyer call me?" "Put me on speaker, Allison," I said. "I want Justin to hear this too." I heard the rustle of the phone. "We're here," Justin snapped. "What kind of game is this, Thomas?" "It's not a game, Justin. It's an audit. You see, I overheard your conversation in the garage on March 15th. I heard everything you said about the pathetic old fool. I heard the plan to humiliate me. I even have a recording of it. Florida is a 2-party consent state, but not in a private home where I have a reasonable expectation of monitoring my own property." The silence on the other end was absolute. I could almost hear their hearts stopping. "As of yesterday," I continued, my voice as cold as a winter morning, "everything I own is in a trust. Allison, you have been removed as a beneficiary. The demonstrable respect clause was triggered the moment your husband stood up and mocked me at a ceremony I funded. You will inherit nothing. Not the dealerships, not the house, not a single cent." "You can't do that," Justin yelled. "We'll sue." "With what money, Justin? You see, I made another purchase recently. I bought your father's debt. All $340,000 of it. I am now his sole creditor. If he doesn't pay me in full within 30 days, I'm foreclosing on his house and seizing his business assets. And as for you, I sent a little package to your compliance director. Your history of unauthorized trading is no longer a secret. I imagine your suspension happened about an hour ago." I heard a muffled sob from Allison. Justin's voice was a ragged whisper. "You're destroying us." "No," I said. "I'm just stopping the subsidy of your arrogance. You wanted to see what a lucky mechanic looks like when he stops being lucky? You're looking at him." I hung up. An hour later, Richard Caldwell was in my office. He looked like he'd been dragged through a hedge. "Thomas, please, I have nothing. If you take the house, we're on the street." "You should have thought of that before you laughed at the man paying for your son's life," I told him. "You have 16 days. That afternoon, my doorbell rang. It was Allison and Justin. They looked broken. The designer clothes were rumpled. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate, feral kind of fear. "Dad, please," Allison sobbed. "We made a mistake. We'll do anything." "Anything?" I asked. I sat them down at the dining table. I laid out the terms. It was a reconstruction plan. Justin, you will send a handwritten apology to every single wedding guest. You will confess exactly what you planned and exactly why you were fired from your previous jobs. You will take full responsibility. No excuses. He looked like he wanted to vomit. Everyone will know. Everyone already knows you're a fraud, Justin. Now they'll know you're a repentant one. Richard, I'm taking operational control of your firm for 2 years. My team will fix the books. You will work as a junior associate under my manager's supervision. If you turn a profit, you keep your house. If not, it's mine. Finally, I looked at Allison. My heart twinged, but I didn't let it show. And you will work the customer service desk at my Dale Mabry dealership. 40 hours a week, minimum wage. You will learn what it means to actually earn a living. You will live in a one-bedroom apartment on your own dime. The luxury life is over, Allison. If, after 6 months, I see real change, not acting, but change, we'll talk about the trust. Until then, you're just another employee. But Dad, those are the terms. Sign or walk out and never call me again. They signed. The next 6 months were a masterclass in humility. I watched my daughter answer phones for angry customers. I watched her cry in the break room after a particularly hard shift. I watched Justin work an entry-level accounting job, his refined ego being crushed daily by the reality of a 40-hour workweek. Richard worked harder than he ever had in his life, finally learning the value of the business he'd almost squandered. One evening, Allison came to my house. She didn't ask for money. She didn't bring an invoice. She just sat on the porch with me while I worked on the Impala. I hated you for the first 3 months, she said softly. I know. But then I realized I hated myself more. I let him turn me into someone I didn't recognize. I'm sorry, Dad. I looked at her. The green eyes were the same, but the soul behind them was finally awake again. I reached out and squeezed her hand. The car is finished, Allison. Want to take it for a spin? We drove down Bayshore Boulevard, the V8 engine humming a perfect, steady rhythm. The world looked different from the seat of a machine you've built with your own hands. Justice isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. It's about taking something broken and having the courage to strip it down to the frame so you can build it back stronger. Justin and Allison eventually moved to Jacksonville for a fresh start. He's working a legitimate job now. They're still in that one-bedroom apartment, and they're still paying their own way. They're not rich, but for the first time in their lives, they're honest. As for me, I still spend my nights in the garage. I've learned that the most important parts of any machine aren't the ones everyone sees. It's the ones deep inside, the integrity of the frame, the strength of the welds, the reliability of the heart. If you've ever had to make a hard choice to save the people you love from themselves, you know that the truth is often a bitter pill, but it's the only one that heals. Would you like me to tell you the story of how I handled the business partner who tried to sell my dealerships out from under me? Subscribe and stay tuned. This was Thomas Merrick, and I'm just getting started.